All right, chat. So I'm a little bit late to the game on this. I meant to react to this for you guys on Friday because I usually stream on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I wasn't able to stream last Friday, but I still wanted to do a bit of a reaction to the Kamala Harris and Tim Walz CNN interview. This was their first public interview since accepting like the nomination and whatnot. Everybody was really interested to see how this interview went and give their thoughts. And so I thought I would react to this with you guys and give my thoughts as we go along. So I have it pulled up here. CNN's YouTube channel broke it into 3 parts. So we're going to check out all 3 parts. They're relatively short. They're less than 10 minutes a piece or so, give or take. So let's go ahead and let's get into this. Let's check it out. We'll start with part 1, obviously. So without further ado,
play that shit!
Here we go.
Madam Vice President, Governor Walz, thank you so much for sitting down with me and bringing the bus. The bus tour is well underway here in Georgia. You have less time to make your case to voters than any candidate in modern American history. The voters are really eager to
That's the thing that's like really interesting about her campaign, right, chat, is the fact that like, you know, it was just a little over a month ago that she was basically positioned as the new front runner for the Democrats in this election. And, typically like someone has plenty of time to prepare to launch a campaign and whatnot. She has not had a lot of time to do this. And yes, she has already picked up so much traction in such a short amount of time, which gives me hope that she actually will win this election. The fact that she's got so much hype behind her in such a short amount of time. I've commented on this before, but the amount of excitement around Kamala Harris right now reminds me so much of Barack Obama back when he was running. There was so much hype around Barack Obama, and I'm seeing similar levels of hype around Kamala Harris. So it's very, very exciting to watch for sure.
hear what your plans are. If you are elected, what would you do on day 1 in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward, in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation, and I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So what would you do day 1?
Day 1, it's going to be about, 1, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity.
Melissa Gray says the only person I want to vote for is Tim Walz, hands down. I will say this. I am genuinely hoping that this somehow leads to a Tim Walz presidency down the line. You know, obviously he's like going to be the VP right now, but I would love to see him run himself in the future. So I'm hoping this potentially leads to that. I am a Tim Walz fan for sure. Absolutely.
Economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life, to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes, a crib. There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now. So there are a number of things.
I mean, the chat says, I'm sure he'll serve white guy tacos on the first day. Oh my God. The white guy tacos thing was such a funny thing to watch conservatives get pissed off about, because conservatives will say the most offensive shit when it comes to like race related humor and stuff like that. But like Kamala Harris makes the white guy tacos joke. Well, first of all, Tim Walz was the one who said he eats white guy tacos, and she went on like, "What is that? Like the mayonnaise and tuna thing?" It was so insane to me how upset people got about that. You have to remember that conservatives are the people who talk about free speech, and when they say free speech, they're just not talking about base level.
Thanks
They
for the
think that
money,
they should be
fucking
allowed to say the most
Nathan
offensive
Knight gave a
shit.
$5 super chat.
Thank you very
Yo,
much. I do appreciate
tipster.
that.
Did you hear Mr. Beast hired a lawyer and is taking Dog Pack 404 to court with a court case?
I did not hear about that. I don't really follow like YouTube drama and stuff like that anymore, so I wasn't aware of that. But thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate it. But yeah, like these are people who constantly go on and on about how like, oh, we should be able to like tell really offensive jokes, outright racist jokes and stuff like that, and it should be totally fine. But somebody tells a joke that's very lighthearted in nature, and all of a sudden they're like outraged and offended by it. It's like the stupidest thing ever.
On day one.
What about you?
Well, I'm excited about this agenda too. As I said, the idea of inspiring America to what can be, and I think many of these things that the vice president's proposing are things that we share in values. And the child tax credit is one we know that reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We did it in Minnesota. To have a federal partner in this, unbelievable, I think, in the impact that we can make.
You talked about, you call it the opportunity economy. You are well aware that right now many Americans are struggling. There's a crisis of affordability.
It's genuinely tough to get by right now with the current like inflation rates and whatnot. Like I can tell you, I know people who have like good careers. Okay, they went to school, they got like a good education, they got themselves like in good careers, and they make good money. And even they're struggling to get by. The cost of groceries is insane. The cost of gas is insane right now. Like literally everything, the prices have gone up on everything, and it's made getting by difficult for so many people and so many families out there. So the fact that they're pushing really hard, that they want to do something to try and fix that for people, that's something that's definitely got a lot of people interested. And I think that that's what a lot of the hype around her potentially becoming president is about, because you have to think about, like, you know, when we see, you know, the online space and like the online left and the kind of things they talk about and what they care about, you know, these are important issues, don't get me wrong. But when you think about like the common person, the kind of things they worry about is like, you know, are you going to tax me more? Are you going to, you know, help me be able to afford groceries and to be able to, you know, take my kids to the doctors when they need to go to the doctors? These are the things that like average citizens care about. So the fact that they're pushing really hard on these types of issues, I feel like this is why there's a lot of hope and a lot of basically fanfare around Kamala right now, for lack of a better word. My brain was kind of having a brain fart there. But I think that's why a lot of people have a lot of excitement around Kamala, because Kamala and Tim Walz they're talking about the issues that they care about, the average American citizen.
One of your campaign themes is we're not going back. But I wonder what you say to voters who do want to go back when it comes to the economy specifically, because their groceries were less expensive, housing was more affordable when Donald Trump was president.
Well, let's start with the fact that when Joe Biden and I came in office, during the height of a pandemic, we saw over 10 million jobs were lost. People, I mean, literally, we were all tracking the numbers. Hundreds of people a day were dying because of COVID. The economy had crashed. In large part, all of that because of mismanagement by Donald Trump of that crisis. When we came in,
I mean, even taking Donald Trump out of it in general, if you look at something like a pandemic, like that was something that anybody with any bit of life experience knew that once we got on the tail end of that pandemic, it was going to affect the economy in a very negative way. Prices were going to go up on things. People were going to lose jobs and stuff like that. It was just going to happen. Like if you've ever seen in your lifetime any significant event like that take place, there is a lot of impact that has on the economy. So I feel like, you know, even if you were to take Trump out of the equation, which Kamala's right, there was a lot of mismanagement on Trump's part there. Even if you were to take that out of the equation, just simply going through a pandemic as devastating as the one as COVID-19 was, it was going to have drastic effects on the economy. And I think in a lot of ways, we're starting to see that now.
Highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America.
Yeah, exactly. We're feeling the butterfly effect, as Dragonite Dragonbort says in the chat. 100%.
And today, we know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies
I
have
just said it was a global pandemic. Other countries are still struggling, but Trump made it a whole clusterfuck. Yeah, I feel like, you know, if you look at like a lot of the numbers and stuff related to COVID-19, we suffered in a lot of ways, like more like, what was it? I watched that documentary on stream recently where like we had the highest number of infections. We had the highest number of, what is it? The highest number of deaths and stuff like that. So like the pandemic hit us a lot harder than it needed to, especially when you take into account how poorly Donald Trump handled the pandemic and how much Donald Trump like ignored the warnings that he was given in advance. Like he mishandled that situation to an insane degree.
have led to the reality that America recovered faster than any wealthy nation around the world. But you are right. Prices, in particular for groceries, are still too high. The American people know it, I know it, which is why my agenda includes what we need to do.
I even like, I look at someone like myself who like, without getting too much into my financial situation because it's my own personal business or whatever, but I could say, you know, I'm someone who, you know, I do have a good career. I know a lot of people think that I do this YouTube thing full time. I don't. It's just more of like a thing that I do on the side. It's like a hobby, and it makes me a little bit of money, but not a ton of money. You know, I have a good career outside of this, a good paying job, and even someone like me who has like a good career, it's difficult to get by. Like I'm not struggling as much as some other people, so I'm not trying to, you know, put myself in the same bucket as them, but it's definitely been a little bit harder to get by than it has, you know, leading up to this point. So it's a struggle for pretty much everybody I know in my personal life is having a hard time getting by right now.
To bring down the price of groceries. For example, dealing with an issue like price gouging. What we need to do to extend the child tax credit to help young families be able to take care of their children in their most formative years. What we need to do to bring down the cost of housing. My proposal includes...
That's a big one. Bring down the cost of housing. You know, like here in America, one of the things that's pushed so hard on people is the American dream of like home ownership. Personally, I gotta be honest, I don't have a whole lot of interest in home ownership. Like I'm perfectly fine just renting. But a lot of people aspire to be homeowners. Like that's what they want. You know, that's like a big goal. Like that's a big achievement for a lot of people in life is to own a home, and you can't do it. I mean, just to give you an idea, one of the homes that I grew up in, and I think I talked about this on a recent stream, when my parents bought that home, I think it was like $150,000 when they bought that home. Okay. That obviously they mortgaged it. They got a mortgage on it or whatever, but it was like $150,000, maybe $175,000 when they bought that home. That exact same home. And just to give you an idea, this was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, decent sized yard, but not a crazy big yard or anything. So it wasn't like a crazy big home or anything like that. 2-bedroom, 3-bathroom, or two bathroom, 3-bedroom. Sorry, I kind of got a little bit confused there. But a nice home, not a huge home, but a nice home. $175,000 when they bought it. That home is now over $500,000, Chad. Like the majority of people cannot afford to mortgage a home that is $500,000. All right. So that's a big thing for a lot of people, bringing down the cost of housing so people can actually afford home ownership again. If they aspire to be homeowners, they could actually afford to buy a home again.
Includes what would be a tax credit of $25,000 for first-time home buyers, so they can just have enough to put a down payment on a home, which is part of the American dream and their aspiration, but do it in a way that allows them to actually get on the path to achieving that goal and that dream.
So you have been vice president for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened. We did it. So now, as I travel in the state of Georgia and around our country, the number of seniors that have benefited. I was in Nevada recently, a grandmother who showed me her receipts. And before we capped the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, she was paying hundreds of dollars, up to thousands of dollars a month for her insulin. She's not doing that any
You
longer.
maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first
We bought an old large house 6 years ago for about 150K, and it's worth approximately 275K now. Damn. So I mean, like, at least that was a good investment on your part, right? At least that was a pretty good investment on your part.
year of being in office to
The issue in my area is all the people buying or out of state lake houses in Michigan just to rent them. Yeah, that's a common thing that's going on right now too. Especially when you look at people who do what is that? I'm having a brain fart right now. Airbnb. People who do Airbnb, tons of people who do Airbnb are buying homes just to Airbnb them. So yeah, that's part of an issue as well, for sure.
extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%. When we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America, what we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
I want to get some clarity on where you stand on some key policy issues.
Renting a house in a tiny town is around $1,500 to $2,400 per month. Yeah, especially where I live. I live in California. Renting like a house is insanely expensive. Like if you were thinking like, oh, you know, I'm just gonna rent a house because I can't afford to buy one. Not here in California. Okay, if you're a renter, you might as well just rent like a small apartment, because like if you're gonna rent a home, like you might as well just save up and buy a home. Like it's that freaking expensive to rent a home here.
Energy is a big one. When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
In 2019, I believe, in a town hall.
This is a big one for like conservatives are pushing that she's like a flip-flopper on a lot of positions. And I do think, like, in all seriousness, there's certain positions that you probably like see where you're like, oh, this seems like the way to go. And after you get a little bit more experienced, you kind of like change your mind on stuff. But this is one that a lot of people are pushing where it's like, yeah, you're kind of flip-flopping on this position. Me personally, as somebody who does care a lot about, like, I have a lot of concerns about, you know, the climate and whatnot, and like the environment. Fracking is something that I'm not the biggest fan of for obvious reasons. So I wasn't too fond of her position change on this personally, but that's just my take.
Thanks for the biddies,
You said you were
Simpy.
Thank you.
Strodes 921 Cheerdex 200 bits. Fracking? Is that censorship?
No, fracking isn't censorship. Fracking is like, let me actually look up the definition of it so you guys can see what I mean here. So, what is fracking? So I'll just read the definition of fracking here. Fracking is hydraulic fracturing is a technique used to enable the extraction of natural gas or oil from shale or other forms of light rock. So essentially, like, what they do is they send like insane amounts of like vibration into the ground to extract natural gas and oil and stuff like that. There's a lot of risks to the environment as a result of that. So let me look that up. What are the risks of fracking? I had something. So the potential risks to the environment include things like water pollution, chemical exposure, air pollution. It could cause fires and explosions, fracking induced earthquakes, groundwater contamination. Let me see what else we have here. I saw some other stuff as well, but like there's a lot of potential risks to the environment. And also, like, if you're concerned about climate change, this is an issue that a lot of people who are concerned about climate change care a lot about. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of her, like, about face position on this, but it's just one of those things.
Asked, would
The
you
thing I said on Twitter, because obviously you have a lot of people right now who are like, not super fond of Kamala. I mean, obviously they're not a fan of Trump, but they're not super fond of Kamala in a lot of ways. And so there's a lot of people saying that, like, oh, I'm just not going to vote for Kamala at all. And I think that that's not the best position to have, especially when we're at risk of having someone like Donald Trump potentially in office again. That's a very bad position to have. Essentially, what I said on Twitter is the following. I'll actually bring it up on screen so you guys can see it. Here we go. So I said, if your answer to Kamala Harris holding a single policy position that you disagree with is, I'm just not going to vote, then it's no better than casting a vote for Trump. You're basically saying you're willing to sacrifice the rights of others and let a fascist into office because you didn't get everything you want. Childish behavior. You will never find a politician that checks all the boxes for you. It's never going to happen. So it's best to vote for the candidate that checks the most important boxes for you than not vote at all. That's just facts. And that's kind of like my position on it. I don't agree with every position that Kamala Harris holds. Okay. Like, obviously I mentioned the fracking thing a second ago, as we'll see in a little bit, some of her kind of vague ways of addressing concerns over the Israel-Palestine situation. Not too fond of that either. But having said that, she is in favor of a lot of the positions, the policy positions that matter to me, as somebody who's on the left. And so because she checks more of the important boxes for me than obviously Donald Trump does, she's going to get my vote. I just don't think it's the right idea that because, she doesn't hold my position on Israel-Palestine, or she doesn't hold my position on this issue, that suddenly you just don't vote at all. It's like I said in that tweet, you might as well just vote for Donald Trump at that point, because you're giving Kim a better chance of winning because you're refusing to vote because one or two policy positions she represents aren't something that you necessarily associate with yourself with. So let's let if you want to look at it this way, let's let the better of two evils win, because the one that, the worst rather, let's let the worst of two evils win because this person has one or two positions that you disagree with. Yeah, it's kind of insane to me.
commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
What made you change that position at the time?
Well, let's be clear. My values have not changed. I believe it is very important that we take seriously what we must do to guard against what is a clear crisis in terms of the climate. And to do that, we can do what we have accomplished thus far. The Inflation Reduction Act, what we have done to invest, by my calculation, over probably $1 trillion over the next 10 years, investing in a clean energy economy. What we've already done, creating over 300,000 new clean energy jobs. That tells me.
Jody, kind of says she kept her words, but can be good and can be bad at the same time. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is a position that I personally am not super fond of. Like, I don't hold a hard position in the sense of like, oh, we absolutely have to ban like fracking or something like that. I understand that we are still a society that's very reliant on, stuff like fossil fuels and whatnot. So, millions and billions of people still drive cars and stuff like that. So we still have a reliance on fossil fuels. As much as we would like not to, that reliance still exists. So like, I get it. I mean, for fuck's sakes, I drive a gasoline powered car. So like, I understand that we still have a need for that. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, as I said before, not every position that a politician has are you going to agree with. So when you're voting for, somebody like the president, for example, you have to pick the person that you think, is the better person for the job in terms of the positions that you want to see affect change, and they're not going to get them all right. They're just not.
From my experience as vice president, we can do it without banning fracking. In fact, Dana, I cast the tie-breaking vote that actually increased leases for fracking as vice president. So I'm very clear about where I stand.
And was there some policy or...
That's a good way to put it, Lynn. You're not picking a lover, you're picking a president. I actually do like that framing, because a lot of people, the way they talk, especially like leftists on Twitter. Yeah, obviously I'm a leftist myself, but like leftists on Twitter, like the way they talk about the world, it's just like, it's nice to think of the world in that way, but you exist in a fantasy land, okay? You're never going to have, as I said before, you're never going to have a politician that they're going to say everything right. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So this like, well, I'm just going to dig my heels in and I'm just not going to vote then. And because like this person has like one or two positions you don't agree with, it's very immature. It's very childish. It's a very stupid way to think of the world. We don't exist in a perfect world where you're going to get everything you want. It's an unfortunate reality that I guess a lot of these people haven't grown up enough to realize, but like, that's just facts. Okay. Like, sorry, I hate to break it to you, but the world isn't perfect and it's probably never going to be perfect. The only thing we can do is vote for the people we think can do the best they can to get us to where we want to be. You know what I mean?
or scientific data that you saw that you said, oh, okay, I get it now?
What I have seen is that we can...
Lynn says, I remind myself all the time that they're never going to tick all the boxes. It's just which boxes and how important they are to me. Yeah, exactly. Like, for example, like if, you know, it came down to something like the, I don't know, the abortion issue, for example. I'm somebody who's pro-choice. I'm very much against like the pro-life types where they're like trying to ban abortion and take rights away from women and whatnot. So I'm obviously going to vote for the person that is pro-choice. Okay. Like that's an issue that means a lot to me, women having the right to do what they want to do with their own bodies. So I'm going to vote for the person that's in favor of that. That's just one example of one policy that I care about. And that's really the way you should be looking at it when you vote. Okay, here's all the issues that matter to me. How many of those issues does this candidate address? And if this person outweighs that person, that's the way that you should be voting. Okay, like that's just the way it is. And clearly, if you're on the left, Donald Trump and the Republicans do not check a lot of those boxes.
We can grow and we can increase a thriving clean energy economy without banning fracking.
Okay, so that's part one. So yeah, not super fond of her position on fracking, but it's not a deal breaker for me. Let's go ahead and continue on part two. This is the big one. The Israel-Palestine situation. They call it the Israel-Hamas situation in the title, but here we go.
Okay. Another issue, big one, is immigration. As Vice President, you were tasked. Okay. Another issue, big one, is immigration. As Vice President, you were tasked with addressing the root causes of migration in southern countries and
Northern part of Central America.
the northern part
Yeah.
of Central America that affects the southern border of the U.S. During the Biden-Harris administration, there were record numbers of illegal border crossings. Why did the Biden-Harris administration wait 3.5 years to implement sweeping asylum restrictions?
Well, first of all, the root causes work that I did as vice president, that I was asked to do by the president, has actually resulted in a number of benefits, including historic investments by America.
General Lynn says another perfect saying. My husband told me, don't let the perfect be the enemy of good. Yeah, so true. And that can be applied to so many things. Obviously, we're talking about, you know, political issues here, like who is running for president. So that's a good example of, you know, something that can apply to, but that can apply to so many things in life. There's so many, like, for example, you know, if you're a content creator like myself, obviously my content's kind of lazy, but let's say you're a content creator who does like video essays or something like that, something with a lot of production behind it. There's so many video essays that if they sought out like having like the perfect video essay, they would never release anything. So sometimes you have to make sacrifices in terms of attaining perfect to attain something that's good, you know? And so that's another example of something that phrase can apply to. It applies to so many things, but yes, I think that is a perfect, you know, phrasing that could apply to this situation for sure.
American businesses in that region. The number of immigrants coming from that region has actually reduced since we began that work. But I will say this, that Joe Biden and I and our administration...
Not just an election, it can apply to the left kind of gatekeeping too. Yeah, you know, as somebody who's relatively new to this space, it's only been a little over a year that I've been a part of this space, I can definitely relate to that. There's a lot of depending on what communities in the online left you engage with, there's a lot of purity testing in the sense of like, oh, you're not good enough to be part of the left if you don't, pass this purity test, or if you don't fit this standard or something. Like, people are imperfect people, and people are always growing and changing as they, progress through life or whatever. So you're never going to be this perfect person that's going to pass every purity test that's thrown your way. Personally, I think purity testing doesn't do any good for anyone. I'm not a fan of that at all. I'm the type of person that if somebody seems like they genuinely want to grow and change the person, I'm willing to give them that chance and that opportunity. Say, okay, you want to be a different person? All right, go for it. I'm all for that. But a lot of people who like to gatekeep in the online left, it's true. They are like that. That this is a thing that happens. The funny thing is, when I joined this space, a lot of the people I used to associate with were trying to warn me about that sort of thing. Now, granted, the people they were warning me were going to do it to me didn't do it to me because they didn't actually know those people at all. But there are definitely people in the online left who are like that, where like, if you don't fit this perfect standard of who we think you need to be, you're not good enough to associate with us. And I think that does more harm to any progressive causes than anything at all, is this gatekeeping of you're not good enough to associate with us for this reason or that reason or whatever the case may be.
Worked with members of the United States Congress on an immigration issue that is very significant to the American people and to our security, which is the border. And through bipartisan work, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, a bill was crafted, which we supported.
Hey, Uber, how's it going?
And Donald Trump got word of this bill that would have contributed to securing our border, and because he believes that it would not have helped him politically, he told his folks in Congress, don't put it forward. He killed the bill.
That's so true, what she's saying right now. If you're not familiar with that, her and Biden put forward like an immigration bill that was like pretty much unanimously like agreed upon on both sides of the, a political aisle. And Trump literally told his appointed people to squash it, because if this thing goes through, they're going to get the credit for it. And I want to get the credit for it. I want it to benefit me during election season. So you guys need to make sure this thing doesn't pass. And that's exactly what they did. Even though this is the same kind of immigration bill that Donald Trump himself would push, he told them to shoot it down because it wouldn't benefit him if they were able to get it passed. And yes, the term I was looking for was bipartisan. Thank you, Baiju.
A border security bill that would have put 1,500 more agents on the border. And let me tell you something, the Border Patrol endorsed the bill. And I'm sure in large part because they knew they were working around the clock, and 1,500 more agents would help them. That bill would have allowed us to increase seizures of fentanyl. Ask any community in America that has been devastated by fentanyl what passing that bill would have done to address their concern. And
Vladimir Mr. Cass is what he's doing illegal. I mean, he's got to be a little bit more specific. What are you referring to? Because he's definitely done a lot of things that are illegal. In all seriousness, what you're referring to, as far as I know, it's not. It's one of those things that it feels like it should be illegal, but as far as I know, it's not. Now, granted, I'll openly admit I'm not super knowledgeable of that, so I could be wrong. But as far as I know, it's not illegal to assign people into these positions the way he is, in a way that could potentially benefit him. But it feels like it should be, in all honesty.
the pain that they've experienced.
So you would push that legislation again. I just want to
Not
ask
only
about
push it, I will make sure that it comes to my desk and I would sign it.
just one other.
Tawa says, to be fair, a lot of people that do purity testing thing are either tankies or woke skulls who, aside of overlapping between each other pretty often, they are more damaging to the left itself. Yeah, I have to agree. I actually 100% agree. If you're one of the woke skull type lefties, or like especially if you're like a tanky, like absolutely, that shit's fucking insane.
Other question about something that you said in 2019 when you first.
I think the funniest thing too is a lot of times when you see the people who are like crazy about like purity testing, when their dirty laundry ends up getting aired out, it turns out like a lot of the things they purity tested people for, they're guilty of it as well. So it's really funny how that works. There's a lot of projection.
Fran, there was a debate. You raised your hand.
Yeah, it really, really pushes people away. Exactly. I can tell you as someone who, like, I've always held like left-wing positions throughout the majority of my life, but I was never vocal with them because I saw a lot of these like woke schooled lefty types that did all the purity testing and stuff. And I was like, I may believe a lot of the same things that these people believe. I don't want to express that I believe those things though, because I don't want to be associated with those kind of people. Okay. That's what kept me from being vocal with my views for so long, is I didn't want to associate with people like that. So when I found spaces like, you know, some of the communities I associate with, like Keffel's community and like Vosh's community and like, you know, Riverboat Jack's community and stuff like that. And I said, hey, there's people in the online left that are like actually chill and not these purity testing woke school dipshits. Like, holy fuck. Like, okay, sign me up. I'm cool with that. But like for the longest time, I kept silent about my beliefs because I was just like, I don't want to associate with these fucking people.
When asked whether or not the border should be decriminalized. Do you still believe that?
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally, and there should be consequence. And let's be clear, in this race, I'm the only person who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations who traffic in guns, drugs, and...
Yeah, Shark's community too, I would assume. His streams are great. Yeah, I don't often get to catch Shark streams, unfortunately, but Shark's a great dude. Like, the few times I've watched Shark, I love his streams. Shout out to Shark.
Human beings. I'm the only person in this race who actually served a border state as Attorney General to enforce our laws, and I would enforce our laws as president going forward. I recognize the problem.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it?
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone who didn't like Shark. Yeah, I haven't got a lot of opportunity to interact with Shark on a personal level. In fact, I don't think we haven't interacted directly at all, to be honest. But in terms of like his content, like I love what he does and he seems like a super down to earth dude. That's like my biggest issue with a lot of like content creators in the online left, is like a lot of them kind of give off this vibe of being like holier than thou in a sense. And it almost seems like they overcomplicate things just for the sake of sounding smarter. There isn't a whole lot of content creators that cater to normie types like myself who are interested in politics and interested in, you know, following content creators that share our similar views on the world, but don't kind of cater to it in a way that helps like normie people to understand. And so I feel like Shark is one of those people. Like anybody who's not super knowledgeable of politics, but they're like, hey, you know, I have like sort of left-leaning views though. I feel like they can watch Shark's content and enjoy Shark's content and come away understanding a lot of these issues better, as opposed to someone like, you know, no offense to Vosh. I love Vosh. I watch Vosh's content, but sometimes when I watch Vosh, like a lot of the stuff he says, it goes over my head. Like it's too, I guess you could say like advanced for me in a way. So I love that I can tune into someone like Shark, and that's also what I try to be as well. I try to be someone that like someone who's not super knowledgeable of this stuff. They can watch this stuff and at least come away with a little bit of an understanding. I like that someone like Shark exists because it makes this type of content a little bit more attainable for the average normie.
Because you were running for...
Yeah, exactly. More normal speak. Exactly. Because that was one of the things that, like, when I first got into the space and I first started creating this kind of content, telling, like, my friends that I had is, like, that's what I want to do. I want to make this kind of content more accessible for people that aren't necessarily super entrenched in this stuff. And so, like, they hear a lot of this terminology and a lot of these labels and, like, it just, they don't understand it. It just goes over their head. So let's make it simple for people who don't understand this, or they don't live and breathe this sort of stuff constantly, if that makes sense. But anyway.
For president in a Democratic primary, and should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is
I was confused a lot when I first joined VGG, but after being there a bit more than 2 years, I picked up a lot along the way. Yeah, that's kind of like how it was with me, because even before I joined this space, I was watching a lot of this kind of content. Like I had watched Keffels a little bit. I watched Vosh quite a bit. I used to watch Xanderhall, not so much anymore for obvious reasons. But I watched a lot of these creators like in passing. So it was kind of the same thing where like I used to be like super confused about like this stuff, and it like went over my head a lot. Like the initial interest that I got when I first started watching this kind of content is back when, you know, it was like the debate bro scene. I may not have necessarily understood what these people were talking about, but just them getting in these heated debates about these like different positions they held, it was very entertaining to watch. And so that kind of got me into it. That was like my entry point into this scene. And then as a result of that, I started watching more of the content and getting more familiar with the subject matter and whatnot. So even though I wasn't like vocal with my views myself, I was watching a lot of the stuff and I was learning and growing as time went on. So, yeah.
My values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed.
Smitty says, this is crazy. You helped my vote if this is the left. I mean, yeah, like it's like I was mentioning before. I think of a lot of people when they think of like the online left, they think of like those purity testing people who like, if you're not a perfect person to a T, then you're not allowed to exist in these spaces. Like that's not true. You know, there are plenty of spaces in the online left that'll be welcoming to you. You just got to find the right ones. Okay. You got to find the people who aren't looking to be judgmental and gatekeep the community, and the people who are willing to welcome, you know, newcomers and like educate them on these kind of things. And, you know, a perfect example is there's somebody who was a moderator of mine that they weren't super knowledgeable on trans issues. They weren't, you know, hateful towards trans people, but there was like some things that they would say where it was considered offensive, and just kind of, they were open to learning like, hey, just letting you know, the way you phrase that is actually kind of offensive. This is the way you should say it, or this is the way you should address those kind of situations. They were open to learning. And I think that that's like the most insane thing, is the fact that there's so many people in these like online left spaces that like the moment you say something that can be considered offensive or do something that can be considered offensive, instantly you're just cut off at that point, when that's a good opportunity to educate someone and say, hey, you know what? I'm pretty sure that you didn't mean to be offensive when you said this. So let me educate you on how to properly say this, or how to properly address these kind of issues, so you won't be offensive again in the future. And what really tells you about someone's character is when you educate someone on a situation like that and they're receptive to it, like, oh, I didn't know. I wasn't aware that that was offensive. Like, I'm so sorry. I won't do that again. And thank you for letting me know. When someone's receptive to it like that, that tells you that this isn't a malicious person who's just here to be like a hateful piece of garbage. They actually want to be educated so they can be and do better. And too often, a lot of these gatekeeping spaces, they don't give people the opportunity to be educated like that. They instantly assume if you say something offensive, that you must just be a bad person that needs to be pushed away. And like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. You know what I mean? But yeah.
And I've worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America, and by extension the globe, around when we should meet certain standards for...
What's a TIFF? Oh my God. The what's a TIFF meme. I gotta be honest. I don't know like the entire like lore behind that, but I know enough to like get a chuckle out of it. The what's a TIFF meme. Holy shit.
Reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border.
Oh no, did we lose Smitty? Did we lose Smitty in chat? Oh no. What happened? Oh no.
Values have not changed. So that is the reality of it. In 4 years of being vice president, I'll tell you, one of the aspects to your point is traveling the country extensively. I mean, I'm here in Georgia. I think somebody told me 17 times since I've been vice president in Georgia alone.
I do. The chat says Project 2025 eliminates birthright citizenship, and it does not specify how many generations back. People are very passionate people on the left are often the exact people who have been attacked or harmed by right-wing culture and theocratic legislation. Yeah, I definitely get what you mean for sure. But yeah, Project 2025. At some point, I want to react to the Legal Ego video that covers Project 2025 because it sums it up very well. I feel like there's a lot of people who still don't understand. Like they hear Project 2025 get thrown around, but they don't actually know what it is and what it represents. And I think it's very important, especially going into this election, that people understand it. So we will absolutely be reacting to that video at some point.
I believe it is important to build consensus. And it is important to find a common place of understanding of where we can actually solve problems.
On that note, you had a lot of Republican speakers at the convention. Will you appoint a Republican to your cabinet?
Yes, I would.
Anyone in mind?
Yes, I would. No one in particular in mind. We got 68 days to go with this election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse, but I would. I think it's really important. I have spent my career inviting diversity of opinion. I think it's important to have people at the table when some of the most important decisions are being made that have different views, different experiences. And I think it would be to the benefit of the American public to have a member of my cabinet who was a Republican.
I'll say this, like, there's a lot of people who in the online left took issue with this particular statement from Kamala Harris. And I think it falls into that category we were just talking about of like gatekeeping and stuff. I actually don't see an issue inherently with her saying I wouldn't mind having somebody who's a Republican, in my cabinet. I don't necessarily see an issue with that. Now, obviously, it's dependent on who she chooses, right? You have to have someone who's obviously receptive to a lot of the positions of the left and whatnot. So you're not going to pick somebody who's like, a Donald Trump loyalist who absolutely 100% is against everything the left represents. But I think that this is one of those situations where like maybe you can kind of bring some of the people on the right to our positions if you're more open to communicating with them. And, maybe it won't work in the long run, but I think it would at least make a little bit more people like, oh, so she's kind of interested in working in tandem with some of us on the right to actually get things done. Maybe that's like a positive way to kind of gain more people to our positions if you show that you're open to having conversations with them. So I actually personally like this. I understand why a lot of people are like receptive to it, like, oh, I don't know about that. But that's kind of the way I look at it. But feel free to share your thoughts in the chat or in the comments.
I want to ask you about your opponent, Donald Trump.
Okay.
I was a little bit surprised. People might be surprised to hear that you have never interacted with him, met him face to face. That's going to change soon. But what I want to ask you about.
I am so looking forward to the debate. What is this, September 10th? When is September 10th? Is that a weekend or something? September 10th is a Thursday. I don't normally stream on Thursday. Or no, that's October 10th. Hold on. September 10th is a Tuesday. I don't normally stream on Tuesdays, but we are streaming that day because I 100% do want to. I do want to react to that for sure. But I am so looking forward to that debate.
Is what he said last month. He suggested that you happened to turn black recently for political purpose.
I could not believe, initial reaction to that is I couldn't believe that when he said it. But then I kind of looked back to him and the whole like birther movement when it came to Barack Obama. And I was like, it's basically the same playbook that he played with Barack Obama. So it shouldn't have really surprised me at all. He's literally played this card before, in a sense.
Questioning a core part.
There's so many similarities to this as well as like the birther movement. There's so many similarities between the two.
Of your identity.
Yeah.
Any
Same old tired playbook.
Yeah, pretty
Next
much.
question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Let's talk about some foreign policy issues that would be on your plate if you become commander-in-chief.
Okay, this is the big one. This is the Israel-Palestine situation. Here we go.
President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. But let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
In the meantime,
and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
but no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done.
Yeah, I'm not. So a lot of the messaging in various rallies that they've done, and then also we saw it all throughout the DNC, where there's talk of ceasefire, which I think is good. Ceasefire is good, obviously. But anytime the topic of are we still going to provide resources to Israel, resources we know that they're using to take countless amounts of innocent Palestinian lives, it becomes a dodge in that situation. This is another issue where I don't entirely align with Kamala, and a lot of people on the left don't. Yeah, I'm not too fond of this response.
When you look at,
I'll say this: it's not a deal breaker for me. She's still got my vote, but I would have liked a better answer to this question. At the very least, I could at least have a lot more respect if, when asked that question, she was just like, "Yes, we're still going to be providing more resources to them." Obviously, I disagree with it, but I would have at least a little bit more respect. Is like, okay, at least she's being honest. But her answer was very much a dodge. Like she didn't directly, like we know what the answer is, but she didn't directly answer the question.
significance of this to the families.
Exactly. That's the way I look at it too. Little Timmy in the chat says Trump would just make it worse. Also, absolutely, 100%.
To the people who are living in that region. A deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war.
This is like the thing that I have to think that don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Yeah, this is okay. This is 100% like the fracking thing was a minor thing to me. It's like, I don't agree with her position, but I can live with that. Okay, I can live with that. This is the big one where it's like, okay, her trying to get a ceasefire deal, according to what she says she wants to do, she wants to get it. Cool. Continuing to supply resources to Israel. Not cool. Not a fan of that. Not a fan of that at all. Ugh.
But will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain.
What does she mean by a deal? She's referring to getting a ceasefire deal. It would have been nice if she elaborated on that a little bit more on how she intends to try and do that. But that's what she's referring to. She's referring to try and get a ceasefire deal.
Committed since I've been on October 8 to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution where Israel is secure and in equal measure the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
Yeah, see that I can agree with. I'm not fond of, because here's the thing, like I don't necessarily disagree that Israel has a right to defend itself if it feels that it's necessary, but we know that the resources that the US are providing to the Israeli army are being used to kill innocent Palestinians. That's an issue for me. And that's an issue for a lot of people. Okay? If they were just defending themselves against the actions of Hamas, I don't think as many people would be upset about it. But the fact that there are so many innocent Palestinians that are getting caught in the crossfire by them using weapons that were provided to them by the United States, that's why it's an issue. That's why so many people have a problem with it. So that's part 2. Feel free to share your thoughts in the chat and also in the comments if you're watching this later on YouTube. The final part. This is part 3 of the conversation. Here we go.
Governor Walz, the country is just starting to get to know you. Governor Walz, the country is just starting to get to know you. I want to ask you a question about how you've described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country.
I've seen the clip. I should have pulled up the clip before, but he does say that. He does say that he used like weapons in war. I wonder if he meant like weapons of war, like that's the phrasing that he meant. But I'm not gonna lie, you know, of all the like ridiculous like swings that the conservatives have taken at this guy, the whole tampon Tim thing, claiming that he lied about his dog and stuff like that, of all the things that the conservatives have swung at him about, this is the thing that if they pushed hard enough, it could probably hold the most weight. This whole like, oh, he's claiming that he served in war and he never did. That's probably the thing that they can really push the hardest against him. But for whatever reason, they're going with he lied about having a dog and he provided free tampons to people who may need them. Like, conservatives are just really dumb. But in any case, like, I guess it could be a misphrasing on his part. I don't know.
Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom.
Does anybody know if I can, does anybody have that clip by any chance and can share it in the chat?
Whether it's Congress or
Of the original statement he made? Let me see if I could find it while this continues.
or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they
Wait, why did that move? What the hell? Hold on. That was weird.
do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is.
Okay, I found a video from the New York Post about it. I'm not a big fan of the Post, but whatever. We just want to see the clip.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at. We won't.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, this is, if he's never actually seen combat, that's probably not the greatest thing to be saying. Like, obviously, in the military, he's had interactions with these types of weapons for sure. But yeah, that phrasing, it's not great. And if they really push that on him, they could probably like make an actual valid point against him. But again, they'd rather argue about him faking having a dog and really stupid shit like that. Yeah, he even made a statement saying he misspoke. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's a big deal, to be fair, but all I'm saying is, like, if the conservatives really wanted to push a negative point against him, they'd have better chance with this than, hey, he lied about having a dog and stupid shit like that.
And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war.
Yeah.
Did you misspeak, as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct. But again,
yeah, JD's tried to get that going. Yeah, I mean that may be like, it's possible he misspoke. Okay, it's very possible he misspoke. I'll say the phrasing of it makes it seem like maybe it wasn't a misspeak. Maybe it was an exaggeration of his position that he held, or like his actions he engaged in while he was in the military. I don't know. I think they could get a little bit of ground if they push that harder. So it'll be interesting to see. But in any case, it's not personally a big issue for me, obviously.
if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog.
Oh, that was so ridiculous. The whole, like, they started mocking his son, who has some kind of, I forget the specifics, but he has some kind of like neurodivergency, mocking his son because he was like proud of him. Like, that was ridiculous. It just goes to show how horrible so many conservatives fucking are. Yeah, that was horrible. Exactly. The attack on his son was vile, 100%. Yeah, I don't know how much of it matters and incredible coming from the side for something as minor as, yeah, exactly. Pretty much.
I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
I just one.
Yeah, that was another thing. They try to question his like service record, just because of the fact that like, he he left the military like right before like they deployed to like a major war or something like that. I forget the specifics. I'm having a bit of a brain fart at the moment. If somebody in chat knows what I'm talking about, then feel free to clarify. But like he served for like many years, as Misgender Lynn in the chat is saying, 24 years they served, and they just happened to leave like right before like a major deployment. I don't see that as an issue.
Other question, because again, this is
The conservatives want to make it an issue, but I don't see it as an issue.
all new.
Yeah.
I mean, this was not, however many days ago, this was not on either of your bingo cards, especially yours. You had to clarify that.
24 years in the National Guard, and he apologized and said he misspoke. We have already seen the Swiftboarding movie. They attacked his kid and claimed he lied about his dog. Yeah, pretty much.
You had said that you and your wife used IVF, but it turned out you used a different kind of fertility in order to have children.
See, that's another thing where it's like at the end of the day, like Tim Walz isn't like a doctor. So I can see him like mistaking the kind of fertility treatment that they used in order to like, have his children. I don't think it makes a difference though. At the end of the day, whether, they used IVF or not, he's still fighting for the fertility rights of the American people. So like, I don't think it really matters.
And then when you ran for Congress in 2006, your campaign repeatedly made false statements about a 1995 arrest for drunk and reckless driving. What do you say to voters who aren't sure whether they can take you at your word?
Well, I've been very public. I think they can see.
Wait, when was his drunk driving?
What do you think that you used a different kind of fertility in order to have children? And then when you ran for Congress in 2006, your campaign repeatedly made false statements about a 1995 arrest for drunk and reckless driving.
They're making a big deal about an arrest from 95? What the fuck?
What do you say to voters who aren't sure?
Maybe he was grouping those types of procedures together in his head. No, I like that's possible too. But like, even if he like maybe mistaken like the kind of treatment that him and his wife got for some other kind of treatment. Again, like the guy's not a doctor, right? Like there's definitely been situations that I've known people in real life where they're like, oh, I have this condition. And it's like, well, no, you don't have that condition. You have a condition that's similar, but it's not that condition. Or they misunderstood a diagnosis they got or something like that. Like these things happen. It's not that fucking deep.
Or whether they can take you at your word.
Like to take a situation like that and turn that into, see, he's a liar. He's not telling the truth. So what?
Well, I've been very public. I think they can see my students come out.
The DUI was in 1995. Again, the GOP is running a convicted felon. Yeah, exactly. And like his crimes were like recent. Like, holy shit.
Out former folks I've served with, and they vouch for me. I certainly
also like a DUI. Like anybody can get a DUI. Not saying it's okay, obviously. Like don't drink and drive, okay, chat. But like a DUI is like you might be someone who like maybe went out, had a nice dinner with the missus and maybe had a little bit too much to drink, and when you got behind the wheel, you didn't realize how drunk you were. Like that can happen to everyone. Again, don't drink and drive. 100%. Like don't do that. But like, you know how many people have like accidentally gotten like a DUI because they got behind the wheel of a car not realizing how intoxicated they were? Like that could happen to anyone. Meanwhile, you got like Donald Trump doing like a lot of the shit that he's been convicted of or the things that he's been accused of. I mean, you got someone who literally was like caught in like hidden recording bragging about like sexually assaulting women, and like you're gonna get on this guy's ass about a DUI from 1995. Like, come on. You can get DUI for taking cold medicine before you drive. Yeah, pretty much.
Gaming Giant Live became a Twitch subscriber.
Thank you.
Half year subbed. When is the goth makeup stream?
Oh my God. Thank you so much for the Twitch sub. I do appreciate it. I don't think that's happening, but you can dream.
own my mistakes when I make them. The one thing I'll tell you is
I have a negative association with driving under the influence. I was in an accident with my dad hitting a tree head on when I was 10. Yeah, I didn't experience anything that traumatic, and I'm sorry that happened to you, obviously. But I grew up in a home where alcoholism was a big problem, which I think contributed to my own struggles with alcoholism later in life. If I'm being completely honest. But having said that, like, I grew up in a home where alcoholism was a problem. My dad was a struggling alcoholic for many years, and we went through a lot of shit as a result of that. So, like, I get it. And my dad was a very frequent engager in drunk driving. That was something he did a lot. So I totally know what you mean. I have a very negative association with that, which you should. Drunk driving is bad, and you're endangering not just yourself, but everyone else on the road around you when you're drunk driving. But yeah, I have my own experiences with that, and it's not fun.
I wished in this country wouldn't have to do this. I spoke about our infertility issues because it's hell, and families know this. And I spoke about the treatments that were available to us that had those beautiful children there. That's quite a contrast in folks that are trying to take those rights away from us. And
You can get a DUI for using mouthwash before you drive. Yeah, although it's not as likely as something like, somebody mentioned, cough medicine earlier, or actually drinking a little bit too much and not realizing it. But yeah, mouthwash, because it does have forms of alcohol in it, it could trip up like one of those breathalyzer tests. So yeah, you theoretically could.
and so
Or not theoretically, but you could.
I think people know who I am. They know that record. They've seen that. I've taught thousands of students.
Did you acquire the invisible brake pedal on your side of the car? When the only times I ever rode with my dad in the car when he had been drinking, I was very, very young, so I didn't know that I was in danger, obviously. Later in life, there would be times when, like, say my dad would show up to pick me up from a friend's house and he had very clearly been drinking, and I was, mature enough to know, like, I'm not getting in that car. But yeah, any time that I was in the car with my dad and he had been drinking, I was very, very young, and I didn't know the danger that I was in at the time. So no, I didn't inherit that. I inherited that trait while teaching my sister how to drive. Okay. That's when I inherited the smashing of the imaginary brake pedal on my side of the car, was when I was teaching my sister how to drive.
Students I've been out there, and I won't apologize for speaking passionately, whether it's guns in schools or protecting of reproductive rights.
Well, that's great that you knew to do that. Yeah, I remember very vividly a time where my mom was at work and she didn't know dad had been drinking that day. And I was at a friend's house and I was ready to come home. So she sent my dad to pick me up, and he was sloshed. And I was like, I am not getting in that car. Absolutely not. I think I was like maybe 14 or 15 at the time. So I called my grandmother and she sent my grandfather to come pick me up. But I was like, no, I'm not letting him give me a ride home like that.
The contrast could not be clearer between what we're running against. The vice president's position on this has been clear. And I think most Americans get it.
Why'd you shoot 90s people were still smoking on airplanes and in hospital waiting rooms? Yo, I remember as a kid, being a kid of the 90s, I remember when you can go to like restaurants and they'd have ashtrays at the fucking tables because you could smoke right at the table as you were like eating your dinner. Like, holy shit, it's an alien thing to think about now, but like that was the norm back then.
If you've been through that, I don't think they're cutting hairs on IVF or IUI. I think what they're cutting hairs on is an abortion ban and the ability to be able to deny families the chance to have a
That makes me happy to hear, honestly. Well, when you grow up with an alcoholic and an abusive alcoholic at that, you very quickly learn how to protect yourself in those situations.
beautiful child.
Vice President Harris, you were a very staunch defender of President Biden's capacity to serve another 4 years. Right after the debate, you insisted that President Biden is extraordinarily strong. Given where we are now, do you have any regrets about what you told the American people?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have served with President Biden for almost 4 years now, and I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest honors of my career, truly. He cares so deeply about the American people. He is so smart and loyal to the American people. And I have spent hours upon hours with him, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room. He has the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly deserve in their president. By contrast, the former president has none of that. And so
I seen on like Twitter, some people took issue with her response to this. Some of them said it's just like PR speak, and maybe it's possible. Or they just like they took issue with the fact that she wouldn't criticize Biden to any degree. And like I think the thing that especially people in online spaces don't understand is, number one, like this is somebody who, as far as we know from what we've seen publicly, they appear to have like a genuine friendship with each other. So, I mean, who wants to have their friends slag them off in the public eye like that? That's number one. And I would assume that somebody who's actually a good friend wouldn't do that to their friend in any case. But the other thing is, like, the issue with Biden, in my opinion, is that it's very possible he was a very capable person at running the country. Like when it came down to actually doing the job, maybe he was very good at it. Okay. The problem is because of the issues he had during things like the debate and the times he misspoke in very important public speaking engagements and stuff, it caused people who are potential voters to lose confidence in him. Okay. And it may be possible that lack of confidence wasn't warranted. Maybe he was good at his job. I know a lot of people who are damn good at their jobs, but when it comes to like social engagements, they're not so great. I'll even use myself as an example. I'm somebody who struggles with social anxiety. And in the course of my day job, I interact with a lot of people throughout the course of my job. And because of my social anxiety, it makes the communication part of my job very difficult. But when it comes to actually doing the job, I'm very good at what I do. So it's possible that, maybe Biden wasn't so good at like public speaking engagements or whatever, but he's very good at actually getting the job done. And because she's so close to him, maybe she knows that. And maybe that's why she wasn't willing to slag him off, because like yeah, these things happen and people lost confidence in his ability to run the country, especially because, let's be honest, he's getting old. Doesn't necessarily mean he's completely incompetent and incapable of doing the job. And maybe she knows that. Now, I don't know that. Maybe he is completely incompetent and she's just being a good friend and not slagging off her friend publicly or her colleague publicly. I don't know. I don't know what's in her head and I don't know what she knows. All I'm saying is that, like, I seen a lot of people take issue with this. I personally didn't have a problem with this. I looked at this as like, this is a good friend and colleague who's not going to do what everyone else wants her to do and just shit all over her friend and colleague. I got a lot of respect for that. But obviously there were some people who took issue with it, but feel free to let me know what you guys think in the chat or in the comments.
One, I am so proud to have served as vice president to Joe Biden. And two, I am so proud to be running with Tim Walz for president of the United States and to bring America what I believe the American people deserve, which is a new way forward, and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been.
By doing the chat says pure optics, Biden's policies will set us up for success for generations to come. I mean, it's definitely going to help us a lot more than anything that Trump was trying to get done.
Contrary to where the spirit of our country really lies.
But the last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your administration.
I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago, where there is some suggestion, warped I believe it to be, that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of where I believe most Americans are, which is to believe that the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. That's what's at stake as much as any other detail that we could discuss in this election.
Because we haven't had a chance to talk, I'm just curious, staying on President Biden, when he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he?
This was the most interesting part of the entire interview for me personally, is her retelling the story of when she found out that Biden was going to drop out of the race. This is really interesting.
Did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so here, I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
I mean, yeah, if you're talking to a journalist in an interview, like there's no such thing as too much information. Give them all the tea.
my family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces. And we had just had pancakes and, Auntie, can I have more bacon? Yes, I'll make you more bacon. And then we were sitting down to do a puzzle. And the phone rang, and it was Joe Biden. And he told me what he had decided to do. And I asked him, "Are you sure?" And he said yes. And that's how I learned about it.
And what about the endorsement? Did you ask for it?
And he was very clear that he was going to support me.
So when he called to tell you, he said, "I'm pulling out of the race and I'm going to support you."
Well, my first thought was not about me, to be honest with you. My first thought was about
That's
him.
another like part of this that tells me that there's like a genuine friendship between the two of them, that this isn't just, two people who just happen to work together. Is like this thought of like, it wasn't my first instinct to say, okay, I'm going to take over, for the Democratic Party and I need your endorsement. Like, she's like, no, like I was concerned about, how do you feel about this? Are you sure this is what you want to do? I support you either way, that sort of thing. That's what tells me that there's a genuine friendship between these two and that they're not just work colleagues. It goes so far beyond that. And that's why I have a lot more respect for her answer to the previous question in regards to like her perception of, Joe Biden and how he ran the country and, whether she actually thought he was competent or not, etc.
Him, to be honest. I think history is going to show a number of things about
So says there is. Harris worked with Biden's son for a long time. Yeah, you're right about that. That's true.
Joe Biden's presidency. I think history is going to show that in so many ways it was transformative, be it on what we have accomplished around finally investing in America's infrastructure, investing in new economies, in new industries, what we have done to bring our allies back together and have confidence in who we are as America and grow that alliance, what we have done to stand true to our principles, including the one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I think history is going to show not only has Joe Biden led an administration that has achieved those extraordinary successes, but the character of the man is one that he has been in his life and career, including as a president, quite selfless and puts the American people first.
I just have to ask you both about two standout moments, aside, of course, from the addresses that you both gave, but standout moments that were perhaps unexpected during the convention. You mentioned one of them, Governor. A moment that you shared, that the world shared with your son, Gus. You were speaking, the camera caught him, so incredibly proud of you, so emotional, saying, "That's my dad."
See, I thought that was a very like touching and wholesome moment. Like I when I saw this moment live, it never had occurred to me at any point that anybody could ever look at this in a negative light or try to represent it in a negative light. So when I saw conservatives taking shots at this moment and making fun of his son, I was just like, how dare you? Like, who's never been in a, unless you have like a really shit, father or something. And, I've had my own issues with my dad, but there have been moments in my dad's life where he's achieved something that I was proud of him of. Who has never had a moment where they're proud of someone in their personal life and they reflect that through some type of emotion like this? And to try and make that into something terrible and mock someone for that, that's just really vile. I feel like anybody who engaged in that is a very disgusting human being.
Yeah, I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that. I'm grateful for so many reasons to be.
Can't believe they tried to insult him for something that was so sweet and incredible. Yeah, it was a very wholesome moment, and it even went further to make, Tim Walz even more relatable. Because like I said, in the past, you look at politicians, even politicians who happen to be on your side, you look at them as like so unrelatable on so many levels. And there's been so many things about both Tim Walz and Kamala Harris that you look at the way they live their lives, and you look at their family lives and stuff like that, and they seem far more relatable than I think any other politician that's ever run for office. And I think that that's a positive thing. People want to vote for someone that is relatable because of the fact that they feel like they can genuinely understand the issues that they're dealing with and the issues that matter to them because they're relatable. So I think that that's a good thing. And to try and take moments like this and turn them into something horrible and mock someone like this, it's really ridiculous.
Be on this ticket, but that moment, to understand what was really important, to have my son feel a sense of pride in me, that I was trying to do the right thing. And it was, you try and protect your kids, it brings notoriety and things, but it was just such a visceral, emotional moment that I'm grateful I got to experience it, and I'm so proud of him. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of Hope. I'm proud of Gwen. She's a wonderful mother, and these are great kids. And I think the one thing is, talking about the era we're in, is our politics can be better. It can be different. We can show some of these things, and we can have families involved in this. And I hope that I hope people felt that out there, and I hope they hug their kids a little tighter, because you just never know, and life can be kind of hard.
And last question, Madam Vice President, the photograph that has gone viral. You were speaking, one of your grandnieces that you were just talking about was watching you accept the nomination. You didn't explicitly talk about gender or race in your speech, but it obviously means a lot to a lot of people, and that viral picture really says it. What does it mean to you?
I am running because I believe that I am the best person to do this job at this moment. For all Americans, regardless of race and gender. But I did see that photograph, and I was deeply touched by it. And you're right, it's the back of her head, her two little braids, and then I'm in the front of the photograph, obviously speaking. And it's very humbling. It's very humbling in many ways.
Did she talk to you about it afterwards?
Oh, she had a lot to talk about. She had a lot. She listened to everything, and she listens to everything.
Give you your hot takes?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Madam Vice President, Governor Walz, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you.
Okay, so that's it for the interview. Just to kind of like sum up my thoughts to wrap up this segment. She didn't hit all the beats for me. There were a couple of responses that she had where I was just like, you know what, that could have been addressed better. I don't entirely agree with that position, etc. But for the most part, I think it was a good first interview. I'd be interested in seeing more moving forward, and I'm sure we will see more moving forward. And I'm especially, as I've mentioned dozens of times at this point, I'm especially looking forward to the debate on September 10th. But overall, I'd say this was a mostly positive interview. Like I said, she didn't hit all the beats for me, but for the most part, I think Kamala Harris winning would be a good direction moving forward for the country, and I genuinely hope she does win. And it's looking like that there's a good chance that that'll happen, considering how many people are genuinely excited about her potentially winning this election.